and chomping at the
bit.
She's so excited.
Rules, rules, rules. Laws, laws, laws. Sometimes people that make our laws get a little carried away and pass some really silly laws. I did a little bit of research and found some examples of some of the silliest laws I've ever heard of. In Fairbanks, Alaska, it's illegal to serve alcohol to a moose. There is a city in Arizona where it's illegal to drive a car in reverse. There's a town in Minnesota where a woman can be arrested for impersonating Santa Claus. In Oklahoma, people who make ugly faces at dogs can be arrested and put in jail or fined. Here's one. In Nicholas County, West Virginia, a preacher is not allowed to tell jokes from the pulpit. And ladies, in Mooresville, Pennsylvania, women need a permit to wear makeup. How scary would that be on a Sunday morning? I think everyone agrees that these are really pretty silly laws, but that's nothing new. Even back in the day when Jesus lived, they had some pretty silly laws. There was a group of religious leaders called the Pharisees who were keepers of the law of Moses, and they believed that keeping the law was everything. They also believed that their own understanding and teaching about the law was the only correct teaching. Jesus was quite often opposed by the Pharisees, and was accused of breaking the laws of Moses, especially one law in particular about the Sabbath, the holy day. Today's Bible lesson tells us about 2 times that the Pharisees accused Jesus and his followers of violating the Sabbath. On one Sabbath day, Jesus and his disciples were walking through some fields of grain. His disciples were very hungry, and they began to break off some of the heads of grain to eat. The Pharisees saw it and said to Jesus, "Look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" Realizing the foolishness of the Pharisees to compare breaking off a few heads of grain to harvesting an entire crop, Jesus answered them, "Haven't you read in the Scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests were allowed to eat. He also shared it with his companions. The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath." Another time, Jesus went to the synagogue and noticed there was a man that had a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched to see if he would heal the man on the Sabbath. If so, they would accuse Jesus of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned towards his enemies and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil?" The Pharisees didn't answer him. And of course, what did Jesus do? He healed the man's deformed arm. Remember, one of the commandments does say, remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. But can you imagine a law so silly that you could not do a good thing for someone just because it was the Sabbath? I'm sure that's not what God intended that commandment to be. Okay. Can we bow our heads and close our hands for a short prayer? Dear Father, help us to be faithful in following the teachings that we find in your word, but also help us to follow the example of Jesus in loving and caring for others. In Jesus' most holy name, all of God's children said, Amen.